Hello there. This one's a story from my childhood. And now, when I was a kid, my grandmother used to tell me a lot of stories, most of them at bedtime. And I used to really look forward to those stories. In fact, most of those stories I still remember verbatim to date. And most of these stories had life lessons. And this particular one was one of my absolute favorites. In fact, it's such a beautiful and such an important story for me that I think I use the learnings from it pretty much every single day of my life. So let's get on with the story. Actually, there was once this king and his queen who had a young son, and they seemed to have a little bit of a challenge with their son in that he had started consuming a whole lot of sweets on a daily basis, and that had started affecting his health. The king and the queen had tried various different ways of convincing their son to go down on the amount of sweets he was consuming, but nothing seemed to have helped thus far. One day, the king heard about a wise man who had come to his kingdom and decided to seek the wise man's advice. So the king and the queen, with their son, went to visit the wise man. The wise man heard the king out patiently and thought for a while. He then asked the king and the queen to go back home with their son and come back to him after a fortnight. The king and the queen were a little puzzled, but they did as they were asked to. And after a fortnight, when they visited the wise man, the man gently took the child close and whispered to him, saying, "Son, the sweets that you're consuming aren't very good for your health. Can I request you to try and reduce the amount of sweets that you consume?" And that was it. He asked the king and the queen to take their child away and go back home. And to the king's surprise, the child gradually reduced the amount of sweets that he was consuming and was pretty much back at the level at which the king and the queen wanted him to be when it came to consuming sweets. The king was very surprised, pleased even, but after pondering over what had happened for a while, being a king, he started feeling a little irritated and a little offended even as to why the wise man had treated him and his queen like civilians and asked them to come back for something which he could have done on the very first day. He thought about it a lot, and then, out of rage, he ordered for the wise man to be brought to his court and, in fact, put into the cells behind bars, basically. The wise man, being who he was, didn't resist anything, and he calmly came along with the king's guards and sat peacefully behind the bars. But the king could not get over this, and he kept pacing up and down his room for a long time until finally he went down to the cells and angrily asked the wise man, "Why did you have to do this? Why did you have to treat me and my queen like civilians and make us come back to you for something that you could have done pretty much on the first day we visited you?" The wise man smiled and calmly responded to the king. He said, "My king, the day you came to me for the first time, I could not have helped you because I was myself in the habit of consuming a lot of sweets. No matter how hard I would have tried, I would not have had any influence on your son. Because if there's something that I cannot do myself, I cannot ever command the respect of someone enough for them to be influenced by me. So, for the fortnight that I asked you to stay away, or for the fortnight that I made you wait, I myself controlled the amount of sweets that I was consuming, and that made me earn the right to request your child to control the amount of sweets that he himself was consuming." The king almost went flush with embarrassment, and he realized how wrong he was in doing what he had done with the wise man. And of course, he made amends and he rewarded the wise man with a whole lot of goodies. But the learning from the story really is pretty simple, right? We oftentimes, want people around us, people in our lives, to do a lot of things that we need them to do or we want them to do. Um, but how often do we look at ourselves before we ask for these things from our near and dear ones? Um, I guess it's pretty simple. That if we do those things ourselves, we earn the right to, at the least, request for those things from others. That's pretty much it. And like I said, this is one of the most important learnings that I've ever had from any story that I've heard. Uh, and coming from my grandmother, this has kind of stuck, and I'm so glad it has. Well, thanks for listening in, and I hope you've liked this or you've enjoyed this story. I'll see you in the next one.